Amara Johnson had spent months planning every detail of her wedding, from the delicate blush roses lining the aisle to the golden ribbon that tied the napkins at each table. Yet, in the whirlwind of excitement and nerves, she had never imagined that her most memorable moment would happen not in the ceremony hall, but in the quiet confusion of a hotel corridor. The reception had ended hours ago, laughter and music still echoing faintly behind her as she navigated the dimly lit hallway. The champagne had left her head light and her heart fluttering. She fumbled with her heels, trying to find the room number that would finally let her escape the public eyes for just a few hours. Her hands trembled slightly, not from the dress, but from the anticipation of the night ahead. She reached the door marked 1213, and sighed with relief. Twisting the handle, she was met with darkness. A faint silhouette shifted inside. "Hello?" she asked hesitantly, her voice softer than she intended. A tall man stepped forward. His presence was calm, almost grounding, and there was something about the way he held himself that made her pause. She couldn't see his face clearly, but there was an ease in his posture, a warmth that immediately calmed the nervous energy inside her. "I'm sorry," he said softly, voice smooth, polite. "I didn't mean to startle you." Amara, overwhelmed and slightly embarrassed, laughed nervously. "No, it's okay. I think I got the wrong room." Her words trailed off as she realized how tense she had been. Without thinking, she let herself lean into the stranger's comforting presence. He responded instinctively, wrapping his arms around her in a gentle, supportive hug. It lasted only a few moments, but in that brief embrace, Amara felt a strange sense of safety, a flicker of connection she couldn't explain. When she finally pulled away, the man merely nodded, a quiet understanding passing between them. She smiled awkwardly and whispered her thanks. "I'll figure it out," she said, retreating to the hall. Little did Amara know, the man she had hugged wasn't just a stranger. He was Jisoo Kang, the younger brother of her fiancé, and someone whose world was far darker and more complicated than she could ever imagine. That night, a simple mistake would set the stage for a connection neither of them could ignore. The next morning, Amara awoke to the soft light of dawn spilling through the hotel curtains. Her head still buzzed from the whirlwind of the night before, the mix-up in the corridor replaying in her mind. She chuckled quietly, shaking her head at her own clumsiness. A wrong room, a brief hug, nothing more. Or so she thought. Her laugh caught in her throat when Brandon, her fiancé, appeared with a phone in his hand and an unreadable expression. "Amara, we need to talk," he said, voice tense but controlled. Confused, she followed him to a quiet corner of the suite, wondering what could have gone wrong before the wedding even truly began. You met someone last night?" Brandon said carefully. His words were measured, but the slightest edge of unease ran through them. Amara froze. I don't understand," she replied, her brow furrowing. Brandon's phone lit up with a picture, one that made her stomach twist. It showed a tall, striking man, dark hair neatly styled, eyes calm but piercing. He looked far too composed, far too aware of the camera, to be any ordinary stranger. Amara's mind raced and then it hit her. The man from the hallway. The one who had hugged her in the dark. "That's Jisoo," Brandon said almost gently. "My brother." The words seemed to echo in her ears. Her breath caught, disbelief mixing with a sudden, electric awareness. Jisoo? Brandon's brother? And, involved in the world she had only heard whispers about? A world of power, secrets, and danger? Amara's hands trembled slightly. She wanted to laugh at the absurdity, at the impossibility of it all, but instead she found herself strangely aware of her heart beating faster. Jisoo had seemed so calm, so safe, so human. And yet, knowing who he really was, the invisible weight of his world pressed in, making her feel both intrigued and wary. Brandon, sensing her reaction, added cautiously, "He's complicated, Amara. Just be careful." For the first time, Amara realized that the hug she had thought was a fleeting moment of comfort had been far more significant than she'd imagined. There was something about Jisoo, something magnetic and unknowable, that had already begun to anchor itself in her heart. Little did she know, this revelation would mark the beginning of a journey neither her nor Jisoo could have predicted, one of unexpected closeness, tension, and the slow unfolding of feelings neither could ignore. Days passed, and the memory of the hallway hug lingered in Amara's mind like a quiet echo. Every time she looked at Brandon, she felt a subtle unease, a whisper that her heart had noticed something she couldn't yet name. But it wasn't just Brandon that occupied her thoughts, it was Jisoo. His calm presence, the way he had seemed to understand her without words, haunted her unexpectedly. It started innocently. At the rehearsal dinner, she glimpsed him across the room, talking quietly to a few family members. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and she felt a strange jolt, as though recognition had passed between them in silence. Jisoo nodded politely, his expression unreadable, yet there was something gentle in the tilt of his head, an acknowledgement that made her heart flutter. Over the next few days she found herself noticing small things about him. The way he straightened the napkins with precision, the quiet way he ensured everyone felt attended to, and the rare, almost imperceptible smile he gave when no one else was watching. He moved through the world with purpose, yet there was a softness in him that contrasted sharply with the cold efficiency people whispered about regarding his family. One afternoon, while preparing for the wedding rehearsal, Amara accidentally dropped a stack of invitations. They scattered across the floor and she groaned, bending to pick them up. In that instant, a hand reached down alongside hers. Their fingers brushed lightly as he handed her a few envelopes, and she looked up into his eyes. "Careful," he said quietly, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. The sound of his voice, calm and steady, made her shoulders relax, as if the weight of all her anxiety had lifted for a moment. She managed a shy smile in return. Though they exchanged only a few words, an unspoken connection began to grow. There was a comfort in his presence, a sense that he understood her in a way no one else could. Each encounter left her heart beating a little faster, a mixture of curiosity and something deeper she couldn't yet name. Amara knew she had to focus on her wedding, on Brandon, and on the life she had planned. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that Jisoo was already weaving himself into the story of her life, quietly, gently, in ways that would change everything. Amara tried to focus on the wedding, on the ribbons and flowers, on Brandon's gentle jokes and the nervous way he straightened his tie. But her thoughts kept drifting to Jisoo. He seemed to appear wherever she went, quiet and composed, always just on the edge of her vision. She couldn't explain it, and part of her knew she shouldn't notice him at all, yet she did. At the family dinner that evening, Jisoo remained distant, observing rather than participating. He spoke only when necessary. His words precise and calm. Amara noticed the way people seemed to give him space, a quiet deference that felt almost instinctive. There was something in the way he moved, a presence that commanded attention without demanding it. Curiosity tugged at her. Who was he really? The calm man who had comforted her in the hallway seemed worlds away from the rumors she had heard about Brandon's family. And yet, there was no denying the pull she felt toward him. Every glance from his dark, steady eyes made her heart skip a beat. Every small gesture, a polite nod, a quiet smile, a helping hand, left an echo of warmth she couldn't ignore. Later, she found herself alone in the garden, trying to steady her racing thoughts. A shadow fell across her path, and she looked up to see Jisoo standing there, hands tucked into his pockets. "It's a beautiful night," he said softly, voice low and steady, almost a question rather than a statement. Amara nodded, feeling a strange flutter in her chest. It is." He didn't move closer, didn't touch her, but there was an unspoken closeness in the air. She realized, with a mix of surprise and longing, that she had been waiting for this small moment, this quiet exchange. Then, with a polite nod, he stepped back, melting into the shadows. Amara's heart ached in an unfamiliar way. He was polite, respectful, even distant. But there was a weight in his silence, a story he was not sharing. Secrets, she realized, seemed to cling to him, shadowing every movement, every word. And yet the pull remained. The quiet moments, the fleeting gestures, the soft hum of connection, they were stronger than reason, stronger than logic. Amara couldn't stop herself from wondering how deeply his world would touch hers, and whether she would be ready for it when it did. The wedding day was fast approaching, and Amara's nerves were at an all-time high. She moved through the preparations with a fluttering heart, arranging flowers and checking final details, while Brandon remained oblivious to the quiet storm of emotions swirling inside her. But Jisoo, he was never far. It happened unexpectedly. While carrying a tray of desserts through the crowded reception hall, Amara tripped on the edge of a rug. Plates clattered, and her hands flew out instinctively to catch them. For a moment she froze, certain she had ruined everything. Then a firm, steady hand covered hers. "Careful," a voice said softly, calm and grounding. She looked up and saw Jisoo, his eyes calm but attentive. Without thinking, she leaned on him, allowing herself a brief moment of comfort. His hand stayed lightly on her arm, steady and reassuring, until her heartbeat began to settle. "Thank you," she murmured, cheeks warming, not just from embarrassment but from the quiet intimacy of the gesture. "You're welcome," he replied, with that same faint, unreadable smile that always seemed to make her pulse quicken. Take it slow. It was a simple exchange, yet the weight of it lingered. In the chaos around them, the chatter, the clinking glasses, the laughter, Amara felt a bubble of calm, an invisible shield formed by Jisoo's presence. For the first time in days she felt truly seen, truly cared for, without judgment or expectation. Later, when she tried to reflect on the moment, she realized it was more than just a helping hand. It was a silent understanding, a gentle acknowledgement of her vulnerabilities. Jisoo didn't need words. The hug, the touch, the brief contact conveyed what neither could yet voice aloud. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, Amara found herself replaying the moment over and over. She felt an unexplainable connection forming, something tender and protective, yet unspoken. Every encounter with him left traces of warmth she couldn't ignore, and she wondered how someone so calm and composed could stir such a mix of curiosity and comfort in her heart. The truth was undeniable. Jisoo Kang was no ordinary man, and Amara's accidental reliance on him had opened a door she couldn't easily close. Follow Amara and Jisoo as their bond grows stronger with each encounter. Subscribe to see how their story unfolds. The quiet after the wedding rehearsal was almost surreal. Guests had gone, the flowers had been arranged perfectly, and the halls were empty except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. Amara lingered in the garden, letting the evening breeze calm her restless thoughts. It had been days since the hallway incident, yet she couldn't shake the memory of Jisoo's steady presence, his calm voice, and the warmth of his hug. She didn't notice him approaching until he was just a few steps away, standing silently in the moonlight. "Amara," he said softly, the single word carrying more weight than any sentence could. She turned, startled, and found him studying her with an intensity that made her heart flutter. "Jisoo," she whispered, almost unsure why her voice trembled. He took a slow step closer, yet maintained a respectful distance. "I need to tell you something," he began, voice low but steady. "Since the night in the hallway, I've felt a connection with you that I can't explain." Amara's chest tightened. She had felt it too, the pull, the strange familiarity, the comfort in his presence. Yet she had tried to ignore it, to focus on Brandon, to stick to the life she had planned. I don't know what to say," she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to say anything," he replied, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "I just needed you to know. I felt it since that night, when I hugged you. And I'll admit, it's been difficult to ignore." The honesty in his words, the quiet sincerity, struck her in a way nothing else had. She felt a rush of emotion she hadn't anticipated, relief, curiosity, and something tender and fragile blossoming in her chest. Without thinking, she stepped forward, letting herself lean into him in a brief, emotional hug. It was a silent acknowledgement of the feelings neither of them had yet fully named. Jisoo's arms held her gently, protectively, the faintest pressure that said everything words could not. When they finally separated, neither spoke. Their eyes met, and in that quiet exchange, Amara realized that their bond had shifted. Something new had begun, something delicate, precious, and undeniable. The path ahead will test Amara and Jisoo, but their hearts are already speaking to each other. Subscribe to follow their journey and see how their story unfolds. Amara had tried to keep her feelings in check, tried to focus on the wedding and on Brandon, but the truth was growing harder to ignore. Jisoo's presence lingered in her thoughts, in the small moments of comfort he provided, and in the quiet warmth of his glance. She hadn't intended for anyone to notice, least of all Brandon, but some truths were never fully contained. It happened during a family gathering at the Kang estate. Amara had been helping with preparations when she noticed Jisoo quietly offering assistance to an elderly relative. Their eyes met across the room and she smiled softly, just the smallest acknowledgement. It was innocent, harmless, yet Brandon saw it. Brandon's face darkened almost instantly, and the air between them shifted. Later, he confronted her in the garden, voice low but filled with a mix of hurt and anger. "Amara, what's going on between you and Jisoo?" Her heart raced. "Brandon, it's nothing." She struggled to find words that would make sense. How could she explain the connection, the comfort, the brief hug that had meant nothing more than emotional support? "Nothing? Then why do I see the way you look at him? The way you lean on him? Amara, are you betraying me?" His voice cracked slightly, a mix of accusation and disbelief. Tears pricked her eyes. She wanted to scream that she loved him in her own way but not in the way he feared. "No, Brandon. I would never. He's different. He helped me. That's all." Brandon's shoulders slumped, but his expression remained clouded with doubt. Amara felt the weight of his misunderstanding pressing down on her, heavier than any wedding dress or floral arrangement could ever be. She realized with a painful clarity that love could be complicated, and intentions could be misread. From the shadows of the garden, Jisoo watched quietly. He had sensed Brandon's suspicions, but he didn't step forward, not yet. He knew that this was Amara's battle to face, and that protection sometimes meant holding back, even when his instincts screamed otherwise. In that tense silence, Amara felt the conflict within herself sharpen. Loyalty to Brandon, the life she had planned, and the undeniable pull toward Jisoo. She understood that the next steps would not be easy, and that hearts could be tested in ways that left them raw and uncertain. The city had a different rhythm at night, quiet in the streets yet alive in a way that made Amara's pulse quicken. She had been walking home from a late rehearsal when a sudden commotion caught her attention. Shouts from a nearby alley, the echo of hurried footsteps. Fear rose like a knot in her stomach, and for the first time she wished she weren't alone. From the shadows a familiar figure appeared. Jisoo. His presence was immediate and commanding, yet calm. "Amara, step back," he said, voice steady, but his eyes scanned the street with the intensity of someone prepared for anything. She froze but instinctively obeyed. Within moments a group of strangers, unknown, threatening, passed by, their gaze fixed but avoiding confrontation. Jisoo had already positioned himself between her and the danger, subtle and efficient, but protective in a way that left no room for doubt. Once the threat had disappeared, he turned to her, the calm mask returning. "Are you all right?" he asked, his hand brushing lightly against her elbow in reassurance. Amara nodded, though her heart was still racing. "I'm fine thanks to you," she whispered, realizing in a sudden clarity how much she had come to rely on his presence. The warmth of that simple touch lingered longer than it should have, sending a comforting ripple through her. They walked together in silence, the city lights reflecting off puddles from a recent rain. Each step felt heavier with unspoken words, yet lighter with the trust forming between them. Amara realized that she had begun to see Jisoo not just as Brandon's brother, or a mysterious figure from her wedding night, but as someone who understood her in ways no one else had. "I didn't expect my life to be this complicated," she admitted softly. Jisoo glanced at her, expression unreadable yet gentle. "Life has a way of surprising us," he said. Then, in a moment of quiet intimacy, he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "But you're not alone, Amara. Not while I'm here." The words, simple yet sincere, settled in her chest like a soft anchor. For the first time in weeks she felt the tension inside her ease. In Jisoo's quiet protection she found not only safety but the beginning of healing, from fear, from doubt, and from the confusion of her own heart. The morning sun spilled through the curtains, painting the room in soft gold. Amara sat quietly, sipping her coffee, the events of the past weeks swirling in her mind. Brandon had finally stepped back, realizing her heart was not his to claim, and the weight of relief and uncertainty pressed gently on her chest. Jisoo appeared at the doorway as if sensing her thoughts. "Good morning," he said softly, voice low, calm, yet carrying the warmth she had come to crave. His presence alone made her shoulders relax, and she found herself smiling before she could stop it. "Morning," she replied, her voice quiet. Their eyes met, and for the first time, the air between them was free of hesitation, suspicion, or shadows. It was just them, two hearts navigating the fragile line between friendship, protection, and something far more tender. Jisoo stepped closer, his gaze steady and sincere. "Amara," he began, pausing to measure the weight of his words, "I can't pretend anymore. I've cared for you since the night we first met. Since that hug. I haven't stopped thinking about you." Her breath caught. She had expected honesty, but hearing it aloud in his voice, with no walls or reservations, made her heart skip. I feel the same," she admitted, cheeks warming. "I've tried to fight it but I can't. I care about you too." The world seemed to pause. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, words unnecessary, hearts speaking louder than anything else. Then, slowly, naturally, they stepped closer and shared a quiet hug, warm, comforting, and full of the unspoken emotions that had built over weeks. The embrace lingered, a promise without words, a connection deeper than anything either had expected. When they finally pulled away, neither let go of the other's gaze. There was no fear, no hesitation, only the quiet certainty of two hearts finding their way. Amara realized then that life's complications, its secrets and shadows, had led her to this moment. And for the first time in weeks she felt peace, real, profound, and wholly hers. The wedding bells rang once more, but this time the atmosphere was entirely different. There were no misunderstandings, no shadows of doubt, only a quiet certainty that had taken weeks to build. Amara stood in the sunlit garden, her dress flowing gently in the morning breeze, heart steady and full. Jisoo appeared at the aisle, every step deliberate yet relaxed, the calm confidence she had grown to trust shining in his gaze. When their eyes met, a soft smile spread across his face, and Amara felt the familiar pull in her chest, a mixture of excitement, relief, and the comfort of finally being understood. Brandon had gracefully stepped aside, giving her the freedom to embrace her own heart. Family and friends smiled knowingly, sensing the depth of connection between Amara and Jisoo. No words were needed, the air around them was warm, tender, and full of the promise of forever. As they reached each other, Jisoo gently took Amara's hands in his. Their fingers intertwined naturally, comfortably, like they had always belonged that way. The ceremony began, but Amara barely heard the officiant's words. Her attention was completely on Jisoo, on the steady rhythm of his heartbeat that seemed to echo her own, and the unspoken vow that had already passed between them long before this moment. When the officiant finally pronounced them partners for life, Amara and Jisoo shared a quiet embrace. No grand gestures, no dramatic proclamations, just a hug, warm and steady, holding all the trust, love, and healing they had built together. In that embrace, the past month's confusion, tension, and secrets melted away, leaving only the certainty of their love. Later, as the garden filled with laughter and celebration, Amara rested her head lightly on Jisoo's shoulder, feeling the peace of being with someone who truly understood her. Every glance, every gentle touch, every quiet moment had led them here, to a bond stronger than circumstance, a love deeper than words. They walked forward together, hand in hand, hearts aligned, ready to face the future side by side. And for Amara, the once mistaken encounter in a dark hallway had become the first step toward a life full of love, trust, and forever.